Hello and welcome to Business Today Television, and we're in New Delhi. Today we're talking and taking a quick on-ground check of the UK-India Free Trade Agreement, which has been quite in the talks for a long time. In fact, just recently at the G20 meeting, its importance was reiterated by both the ministers of both the countries. And to talk more about this, I'm joined by Mr. Kevin McCole, who's the Managing Director of UK IBC. Welcome to India.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Always a pleasure to be here in India.
Great. So I'm going to just, I'd say, jump to the question that all of us have been wanting to know. What is the latest update when it comes to the trade agreements? Now, we've been told that there are going to be meetings lined up next month. What are you picking up?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. As you said, the two Prime Ministers met in Bali last week and they reaffirmed their commitment to doing a deal. I think the negotiators are working, urgently towards a conclusion. And I think it's fair to say that there was a lot of noise around Diwali time. There was expectations that a deal would be done by Diwali. But I think if we take a step back, what the governments actually agreed to do back in April was to complete the majority of the talks by the end of October, which they've done. So 14 of the 26 chapters have been provisionally closed. And now the negotiators are continuing to work at pace to try and close off some of the stickier points that are there in the negotiation. So hopefully with the urgency and the pace that's in the discussions, we will see a deal emerge that's both comprehensive in terms of sectors, so goods and services, and doesn't take us too far into the future in terms of the deadline. We want to see something happening in the near term, but we don't want to rush something just for the sake of speed. We want to take our time and get a deal that's comprehensive.
Okay. Kevin, you did talk about deadline, which we'll come to later, but what was this delay about? Was it an administrative delay, or was it because of course, the political developments in the UK?
But I don't actually think there was a delay. As I said, the joint statement from both governments when the PMs met in April was to aim to complete the majority of the talks by the end of October, which they actually have done.
But we were looking at a signing ceremony close to the Diwali.
That was never formally stated by the governments. The aim was to complete the majority of the talks by Diwali, which they did. And I think, as you rightly indicate, there's been changes in Prime Minister in the UK, and some turmoil since sort of June, July time. But for the negotiations themselves, I don't think that actually impacted the negotiating teams, because back in January they were given a mandate by the cabinets from both countries. So the negotiators continue to work to that mandate. And it's only as we approach this period now where we're bumping up against the edges of the mandates, that's when the politicians have to re-engage and to try and do some of the political negotiating that will help us to land a deal. So I don't think the changes in the Prime Ministers in the UK over the last 6 months have actually derailed or slowed down the negotiations at all. But it is now the point, perhaps after the next round of negotiations in December, that's, I think, when politicians may have to get more engaged in the process.
Okay, that's great. So next negotiation in December, but when it comes to the deadline, do we have a date, or we're just going with the flow?
I think we're not going with the flow. I think the UK government want to negotiate with urgency and keep pace in the process, but setting a deadline isn't necessarily the right thing to do. In fact, UK businesses would rather the governments took their time to establish a deal of real substance rather than do a deal that's got real speed. Because you've got the 5th and 6th biggest economies in the world negotiating a deal that is sort of a once in a generation deal. We're not going to come back to this in 5 or 10 years. This deal has got to be comprehensive enough to capture the breadth of a big trade and investment relationship. So don't rush it, take time and get it right.
Great. I think that's a great answer. Now, what kind of trade benefits or tariff reductions in what sectors can this agreement and collaboration and this comprehensive agreement bring?
I think there's tariffs are one of the chapters that have been negotiated, and of course tariffs span a wide range of goods. And I think a great win for India would be a reduction in the textiles tariff, so that Indian textiles could be more competitive against other countries' textiles markets. So if you imagine if the Indian textiles become more competitive, then the Indian textile sector here can grow, which can create thousands and tens of thousands of jobs for people that work in those factories. And I think it's important to recognise that that sector is largely sort of females that are employed. So this could create lots of really good jobs for women all across India if that tariff, the textiles tariff, is reduced. So I think that's just one sort of element of what can be really achieved here that would help trade. We talk about those macro trade numbers, but what does it mean to people on the ground? And this could be creating jobs for young men and women all across India. So I think that's what we need to keep an eye on, the individuals who benefit as much as the sectors that benefit.
Great. Now we know that India has had a comprehensive agreement with UAE recently, and the one with Australia has just got a legislative approval. The next, of course, is with the UK. You've also released, I think UKIBC has released this Ease of Doing Business report. Now, what do you see? Why do you see India as an attractive destination?
You're right. We're releasing our 8th annual Ease of Doing Business report tomorrow, and businesses are excited about the FTA, but they believe that the ease of doing business reforms in India are equally as important, perhaps more so for businesses. We asked businesses in that survey what attracts them to India. An overwhelming number, 65%, say that it's the size of the consumer market, the size it is now, and how it's going to develop over the years and decades ahead. So what draws them in is the size of the market. What we also found interesting is that businesses are looking closely at the import and export tariffs and the imports and exports rules and regulations in India, which shows to me that they're making in India. They're importing components, they're adding value in India, and they're exporting from India. So they see India not just as a market itself, but also as a manufacturing hub. And it really fits in with the Make in India, Self-Reliant India agenda, which businesses from the UK, those UK investors really support. We asked them a straightforward question in the survey: is Atman Bharat good for your business? And 67% of them said yes.
Oh, that's great.
So overwhelmingly positive response from UK investors.
Great. One last question before we end this. You have a new Prime Minister, so what is the kind of economic path, or I'd say economic encouragement you see the country in the coming months?
What I think is, we saw it last week with the autumn statement that the Chancellor of the Exchequer, our Finance Minister, took to Parliament, and that was put together very much with the Prime Minister, Mr Sunak, who of course was the Finance Minister or Chancellor until July this year. And you've seen the markets respond very well to those measures that they've taken. I think they're sensibly looking at stabilising the market's perceptions of the UK and putting in place the building blocks for the years and decades to come. You know, it's important to recognise that during the pandemic, the UK government increased its debt to support the economy and support people, and now with the war in Ukraine, there's another support package for helping households with their energy. So government debt has gone up, and that created two challenges within the space of 2 or 3 years, created real challenges. The measures they've put in place now, I think, give that macroeconomic stability. But the fundamentals of the UK economy are still really strong. It's still the world's 6th biggest economy, world-leading manufacturers, financial services hub, and an innovation and education powerhouse. So the fundamentals are still strong, and now we've got the economy on a more even footing. So the future for the UK economy is as bright as ever, and the future for the UK-India bilateral relationship is brighter than ever.
And that's good to know. Like Kevin says, the future of India and the UK bilateral relationship is brighter. Thank you very much for joining us, and we wish both the governments great luck on this collaboration.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.